So I kind of wanted to start with for people that are already eating quite well and sleeping quite well, what is some stuff that you'd recommend to take them from well to kind of the top stages? And maybe what are some personal things that helped you do that?
Yeah, I think that's where the idea of biohacking can really shine because, I think we have this big percentage of the population that are really sick. They're really struggling. They're looking for answers. They're just trying to get to that baseline level, kind of that you mentioned. And then there's this other population of biohackers that are like, okay, I feel good, but I want to feel amazing every day. So let's start with diet. I think with diet, a lot of people, first of all, think they're eating well. So I would first question, are they actually eating well? And what does that mean? If they say, hey, I'm eating a whole food diet, it's paleo or keto, carnivore, whatever their choice is, I would say, let's put a CGM on, a continuous glucose monitor, and actually see if that diet is working for you. Because quite often, a healthy diet is actually not supporting proper glucose metabolism, which we know leads to better metabolic health. And I don't know about where you guys are, but we say in the United States that there's only about 88% of the population is metabolically healthy. And when we don't have metabolic health, we see an increased risk of heart disease, diabetes, cancer, Alzheimer's, dementia, autoimmune conditions. The list is kind of endless. So I think a CGM is a great hack, and we can go into that more if you're curious about that. But I think that's a really good way. So if anyone's not familiar with what that is, you actually are putting a glucose monitor on the back of your arm, and it's looking at your glucose 24/7 for about 2 weeks. And then you can put on a new patch if you want to go further. But what's really insightful here is we can actually see, okay, so you had breakfast at 9 a.m. What is your glucose doing at 10 a.m., 1 hour after? What about 2 hours after? So we should see a steady incline in glucose, right, if we're eating normal foods. And then within 2 hours, we want to see it come back down to baseline. So that's number one, is with what you're eating, is it actually supporting your glucose? And then two, we can look at stressors, exercise, hyperbaric, cold thermogenesis, sauna. How are those stressors impacting your glucose? We probably will see a little spike, but then does it come back to baseline in a normal fashion? And then the third thing I would say is sleep with that. What is your glucose doing while you're sleeping? Because we can do the old school finger prick of glucose all day long. You may have to put a lot of Band-Aids on, but you could do it. But when you're sleeping, you're not going to be testing it unless you have a CGM on. And that could be really insightful because if the body is going into a stressful state, whether it's sleep apnea, you're not getting enough oxygen, maybe there's mold in the bedroom, EMF exposure, any of these major stressors while you're sleeping, we can actually pick that up with your glucose by seeing it either rise while you're sleeping or dip while you're sleeping. But it should be pretty steady all night long. Yeah, I'll kind of leave that there. I would say that's a good place to start for people as far as diet.
Does it depend on some individual factors on what kind of foods will affect your glucose? I mean, obviously, it's going to be the sugar and the refined carbohydrates that do the worst things. But are there anything that you can say that maybe doesn't seem on the surface like it affects our glucose in a bad way, but might do these things that people eat and that maybe think that they're healthy when in reality they're not good for our sort of metabolism and our internal health that we don't really think about?
Definitely. So there's a huge bio-individual component in all aspects of health, but especially with glucose metabolism. So the old school thought was we follow the glycemic index, the glycemic load, we have to avoid the higher foods, but that's not true across the board for everyone because you have different factors. You have age, physical activity, health status, hormones, genetics, your gut microbiome, your sleep health, right? All of those are going to affect your glucose. So if you're not tracking, it's going to be harder to pick that up. And so for me personally, what I have found, this is wild, the biggest driver of poor glucose control for me is a bad night of sleep the night before. It's not the cupcake or the ice cream or like the pasta that people would think. It's not getting a good night's sleep the night before. So you have to control something like that. Like for me, that's the number one. But then I would also say like healthy foods, fruit. I know there's a big debate about whether fruit should be allowed in the diet. For some people, they can eat fruit alone, totally fine. If I have a cup of like pineapple or something by itself, my glucose is like off the charts. But my sister, who's genetically very similar, she can actually eat more fruit than I can. So that's an interesting one. And then something else I found that was fascinating was I like to experiment when I put these CGMs on. I had a gluten-free organic flatbread with vegetables on top. And I think like the average person would think like, oh, that sounds good. It's got vegetables, it's gluten-free, it's, checking all the healthy boxes. It was my highest glucose spike I had ever seen. So if I hadn't tested it, I wouldn't have known that was so terrible for me.
And that's just because everyone's body's different and so it reacts different to different stuff.
Yeah. Like all the factors that I said. So, the gut microbiome plays a really big role, and we're seeing a lot of really good research coming out with, increasing fiber to feed the gut diversity in the microbiome. Things like Akkermansia are really good for glucose control, but our guts are so it's kind of the wild, wild west with controlling the gut microbiome right now that we can, tune in there, we can see better glucose control. And then I also think genetics are important. So where are your ancestors from? Just a simple genetic test can give you a lot of information. And the nice thing is you only have to do it once. Your genetics don't change. So for me, although my great grandparents are from Italy on one side, the other side, they're from Ireland. I can't really do a lot of like the pizza, pasta, carb stuff. I just don't do well with that. I would like lean more towards the diabetic range if I ate that way. So genetics are important too.
There's sorry, Jake. I just want to. There's a lot I want to unpack there, but I first want to talk about for people who won't be as aware of this, like why is like rapid changes in glucose and then sustained high glucose such a bad thing? Because in my head, I'm thinking about like fatigue, then it's not going into the cells can't respire and give you that energy, and it's sort of just sitting in the blood. And I know there are sort of bad consequences to that, but can you touch a little bit on why it's not good to have these kind of blood glucose levels?
Yeah, for several reasons. I would say to start off, we want to prevent insulin resistance, right? When we see insulin resistance, then we see diabetes later on, which comes with, a big bucket of problems. We also see Alzheimer's, dementia, which we are now calling type 3 diabetes. These are all coming from insulin resistance. And so what happens is when your body is constantly getting this flood of glucose, your pancreas is releasing insulin to bring it down. But it's kind of like the boy that cried wolf. You can only do that to the body so many times before the body's like, whoa. Let's become a little bit resistant to this insulin because it's taking over. It's causing inflammation. It's wreaking havoc in the body. But when we have that insulin resistance, we can't get glucose into the cell, like you said. And that's where we get that energy. So that's one problem. We want to prevent insulin resistance. Two, you can only store so much, right? We can store it in the liver as glycogen, but when we have excess glucose, we're going to end up storing it as body fat, which nobody wants. And along with that, we see, obviously obesity. And with obesity, we see an increase in all-cause mortality. So I'd say those are the two big reasons. And then just in general, the higher your glucose is, we see more inflammation. Chronic inflammation is another driver for disease. So we want to be really mindful of that. So that helps answer that.
Did you have any other points, John?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this goes completely away from what you were going to ask, Jacob, but I'm interested in then, do you suggest and do you live for yourself more of a kind of lower carbohydrate approach to diet? And myself as like an athlete, and I training like pretty much every day, sometimes twice a day. Like I know that when I probably feel better when I have a lower carb meal, but then I wonder, how do I get the calories in that I need without eating so many carbohydrates and avoiding things like pasta and rice, which are, I think, good before a training session for like glycogen and getting that energy in, but also they're pretty calorie dense for the amount you can eat. So yeah, do you suggest more of a lower carb approach to things?
I think the term lower carb can be quite relative. Some people think lower carb is 30 grams of carbs a day. Other people think lower carb is 100 grams of carbs. So I think, first of all, it is a relative term. For me, I seem to do well around 100 grams. I'm pretty active. I do work out, but I'm a pretty small, body frame. I don't need a ton. If you're very athletic, yeah, you do need carbs. There's actually a really good theory that for athletes, if they can train in more keto fat adapted and then switch to using carbs for fuel for like endurance training, racing days, that's really helpful. But again, it's so different. And I think if you can time your carbs after workouts, that's a really good time to kind of refeed. And we see that refeed can work for about 24 hours. So if your really intense workout is, say, at 4 p.m., do your big carb refeed after that. And then maybe the next day for breakfast and lunch, you can do a little bit lower carb, more protein, more fat. And then fat, you can get a ton of calories from fat, right? But you don't want to do that typically before and after a workout because it does slow metabolism down.
Yeah, and it's also just things like the sources of fat are hard to eat like high quantities of. Like I can't just eat spoonfuls and spoonfuls of peanut butter, or I don't really like adding just like olive oil to things. And eggs, you can only eat like 5-6 eggs in one sitting, but going more than that just feels crazy. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah. I think the more variety you can get so you don't get sick of them, so just nut butters and seed butters alone, macadamia, cashew, peanut, almond, how much variety can you get? And then the nuts and seeds, chia, hemp, flax, all of those. And then, more of the saturated fats, the butter, the coconut oil, the eggs, the meat. I think people don't realize how much fat they're actually getting from eating their meat, especially grass-fed, pasture-raised, really good quality meat. You're getting good fats from that. It's obviously high in protein, but we are still getting some fats there.
What's your thoughts on like carnivore diets? Because they've they seem to be slowly more popularized. That might just be me. But yeah, what's your thoughts on them?
Yeah, it's definitely really popular, at least here in the States. I think it serves a role. So what I really see is for people that have maybe an autoimmune condition or some severe gut dysfunction, taking a full break from any fibrous foods and focusing on the carnivore diet can be really helpful. Short term. I don't think humans are meant to eat that way long term, because we do see a lot of benefits with fiber, again, going back to the gut microbiome and supporting that gut diversity. But I think short term, it can be very therapeutic. I would also advise people to make sure they're doing it correctly. So some people do carnivore and they're just eating like bacon and eggs all day kind of thing. It's like, well, no, you got to eat nose to tail, right? You have to do the organ meats. Even if you're not going to do the actual organ meats, you have to do it in a supplement form. You have to be getting all of the vitamins and minerals somewhere in the diet. You can't just be doing the animal protein all the time. But yeah, I think it can be beneficial.
And so short term, you mean kind of like 2 weeks, just?
I would say I would give it at least 30 days. Some people kind of play like 30, 60, 90 days, depending on how severe your gut issues are, your autoimmune condition, whatever you're trying to overcome. But I would give it at least 30 days. Really.
What is it that is kind of lacking the most, would you say?
When they do it wrong, or why they would need to do it?
Why it's not good long term?
Because I do think that we need fiber long term.
Right.
Yeah. But again, so with a lot of the gut issues, fiber can just be very kind of inflammatory and can be disruptive for the gut, especially people that have something like SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. We know that fiber can be really problematic there. So taking that break can be really good for helping the gut just give it some time to heal. And then once it's healed, I do think we need fiber. I mean, if you look around the world, especially the blue zone regions, they have a very high fiber diet. If we look at different communities around the world that have not been completely touched by what we call the standard American diet, right? The white flour, white sugar, all the processed junk. They tend to eat a really high fiber diet and they have really good, healthy gut microbiomes.
My kind of philosophy, I don't know, have you heard of a guy called Eddie Abu?
No.
He's
that?
He's an influencer who's he's grown rapidly this year, and his protocols are kind of what I'm trying to stand by, and it's his basically main advice is single ingredient foods and all whole foods. So I think one thing he does really well is he brings attention to all these sources that people think they're good for them, but it's only the marketing. So for example, cereals, he also criticizes like rice and pasta for having too much I think it was glucose for a carbohydrate, when people have that too much, and generally all these kind of different versions of, I don't know how to say it.
I mean, he's a lot against like lots of preservatives and colorings and extra flavors, basically all the crappy like chemicals they put in food. But yeah, that's kind of like, I think that's he basically was a bodybuilding champion back in the day, and he like screwed up his health with steroids and protein powders and all of the chemically crap. And then as he's got older, he basically had panic disorder issues. He had some proper bad health issues, extra gained weight when he sort of retired and stuff. And then he started this protocol that's like sorted his health out, and he's back to like having better health metrics than he did when he was like a teenager, right before he took the steroids and stuff. So that's like his story. But his main thing with people is just like, look at all the shit that everyone eats, and like, if you eat this stuff, you will die. And he's like, he comes across in kind of like this angry, sweary, like dad figure way, but it really resonates with people. But this kind of links into something I wanted to ask. Like, what interests me is that we can live in a world where there seems to be an agenda on both sides, where like a vegan diet is considered healthy and a carnivore diet is considered healthy, but surely they're two opposites of one spectrum. And in my head, I struggle to kind of put two and two together there. So I want to just ask you about what you think of that debate, and why you think both sides think they're right and they think the other side is bad, and how those opinions can coexist. And then ask you if there is a happy medium within that argument, or where you personally think people should be landing on that spectrum, or whether it should be like we've been saying, like a whole food single ingredient, but you can go for the plant foods and the meats and stuff as well.
It's a big question. Yeah, I wish the debate would settle down. I mean, over here in the States, like, people just get so angry about it. And I think there are benefits to both sides. Again, I don't think either one is meant to be long-term, especially when we look at our ancestors. They weren't eating vegan diets. They weren't eating carnivore diets. We didn't evolve that way. So let's start with a plant-based diet. Do we need more plant-based foods, more vegetables, more fiber, more fruit, vitamins, minerals? Yes, I think most people need more of that. Yay, that's great. Animal protein, though, that comes with not only the protein, but carnitine, B12, iron, so many nutrients that you cannot get in plant-based foods. And we know the body needs those. So I see a lot of vegans actually have a lot of health issues. Maybe at first they feel better. They got off of the McDonald's, the fast food, the processed food. They went vegan. They're like, oh, I feel so much better. I'm like, well, of course you do. You got off the junk food. But they claim, oh, it's the vegan diet that did it. I'm like, I think it's more that you just stopped eating all the crap. The other thing we see a lot with some of the research that comes out about this is the people eating a plant-based diet are more likely to exercise. They're more likely to do yoga. They're more likely to meditate. They're more likely to focus on their sleep. So it's like, what about all those other factors that are influencing their health, not just what they're eating? There's also the argument of like this catabolic versus anabolic state. So catabolic, you want to think like high protein, carnivore, muscle building, could lead to cancer long-term if we're in that catabolic state all the time. I'm sorry, anabolic, reverse that, anabolic. Catabolic is vegan, cleansing, detoxing, autophagy, fasting, benefits there too, but we need a balance of that. So kind of like you were saying, like this guy with the bodybuilder, he was in that anabolic state for so long, especially with steroids. I mean, that's like the fastest way to get into an anabolic state, but he was probably never having that opposite reaction where he was actually cleaning out the body. So I think that's the other thing, carnivore is too anabolic, vegan plant-based can be too catabolic. And then also circling back to carnivore, that argument, like I was saying before, I think it's great short-term, heal the gut, but then I think we need to get back to like a balanced omnivore, Paleolithic type diet. I think everything kind of in moderation. Like, we need animal protein. We don't need a 14-ounce steak for dinner every day. Like, there's definitely an extreme end of that. And then the other thing with the plant-based is I'm seeing a lot of processed foods actually coming back in, but because they're plant-based, they're saying it's okay, but it's actually filled with, seed oils and cornstarch and GMOs, a lot of other, really junky things for our health. But because it's plant-based, people think it's healthy.
And is the problem with vegan diets still that people are struggling to get their protein?
I still think that's a huge problem. Yeah. I mean, it's just impossible to get enough protein on that diet. I mean, even if you're doing, like, say you're doing rice and beans as like your combo to get some protein, you would see such a high glucose spike from all the carbs that it's not worth it. You're like, yeah, I hit my protein, but my carbs were at 400 grams today. It's like, okay, that didn't really balance things out. Yeah.
Joe, I
Yeah.
haven't
And then-
really,
yeah.
Joe, I haven't
Yeah.
really asked you before, but like, what is it like? Because you were vegan for a little while. What sort of things did you notice, and did you get your protein in?
I think it might have been a similar situation to what was just mentioned. That like when I went vegan, I think I got the benefits of eating more fruits and vegetables and getting away from sort of the crap that can usually come from like a standard diet and stuff. We used to eat like a lot of lentils, chickpeas, beans, as you just said, stuff like that. A lot of tofus and tempehs as well, and also more regularly than I'd like to admit, the kind of meat substitute stuff that, like you say, I think that's a key thing of people think that's healthier because it's like, oh, it's mince, but it's made of plants. But then like you look at the ingredients list and it looks like it's written in a different language. So
Yeah.
I think I enjoyed it for a time. I think it was a good time because I was in lockdown and I could like make my own sort of chickpea salad for lunch, and I was eating like a lot healthier than I did considering like I was a 16-year-old boy at that point. But then when I actually returned to life and sort of went to college and stuff, it just wasn't workable with having to like get food on the go and stuff, because all the food on the go, they're not going to have like a chickpea salad or like a tempeh wrap or something in a shop. It's going to be, here's like meat-free bacon. Do you know what I mean? Which just isn't what I wanted to eat. So then I gradually moved and brought sort of eggs back in. And now I just try and avoid as much crap as I can. That's my main protocol. But I can see why people people feel so much benefit from it. And I think what got me into it is I watched like the classic iconic documentaries about that kind of promote this plant-based diet, and that, you know, they come with their own sort of biases and stuff like that. But that was my story with it. But it's interesting hearing you talk about it like that. I'm interested in, so your whole thing is like biohacking, right? Which is quite a broad thing, not just diet specifically. I'm interested in what sort of if there are a couple of things that people can take away. I mean, you've talked about the glucose monitor and seeing how foods affect that and sleep, et cetera, et cetera. But for me and Jacob and people listening to this, what are like a couple of things that they can go away that they might not be doing now that they can add to their life? Because one thing I'm trying to do more is sauna. One thing I'm trying to think about more is maybe fasting, but then balancing that with like my training sessions and you know, I don't want to go into an intense session with an empty stomach because I'm not feeling nauseous and all these things. But talk about any sort of smaller protocols that people can add into their life right now that isn't as drastic as going carnivore that you think would help them feel better in their lives.
Yeah, I think you just mentioned a great one, fasting. I think it's a great free biohack, right? You're not eating. It's the cheapest biohack you can do with your diet. And fasting can mean a whole wide, range of things. I would say number one for people to do is just look at how many times a day you're eating. The average American is eating 18 times a day, counting snacks, any lattes, desserts, 18 times a day. That's the average. And then you have people like me that are only eating 3 times a day. So I'm really holding the average down. So I don't know how it is where you guys are, but that's insane. So I would say number one, look at actually how many times you're eating. It counts that handful of peanuts or anything at your desk. That counts. I would try and get that down to at least 4 would be like the max times that you're eating. Your body does not want food coming in all day long. So you want your body to have that break. So number one would be that overnight fast, at least 12 hours. Every human should not be putting food in their mouth for 12 hours. Hopefully you're sleeping for at least 8 of those hours. So that should be pretty easy. And then when you are awake, 2-3 meals, maybe 1 snack. If you're like, it's a training day and you're like, I need a little bit of extra fuel to get through this workout, that's fine. But if you're sitting on your butt all day, you can probably get by with maybe 2 meals. Then there's extended fasting. So this is a very bio-individual thing. So for men, I see men do really well with like a 16-hour fast every day, 8-hour feeding window. For women, especially reproductive years, I keep them about 12, 13, maybe 14 hours of fasting because we do see a disruption in hormones. It can be too stressful on the body. And then longer fast, you can do maybe a 3-day water fast, 5-day water fast. Again, it has to be personalized. You have to know what you're doing if you're going to do that. Also for men, like a bi-weekly 24-hour water fast. Like pick a day that is your recovery day. You're not training. You know that you can just be in a parasympathetic state and rest. Great time to do a 24-hour fast, because then you're going to get a little bit more of the benefits of the autophagy and the cellular cleansing. But yeah, I mean, you could go on about fasting, but it's free. It's totally free. You actually save money because you're not going grocery shopping that day, usually.
Yeah. Here in the UK, there's a big snack industry. And I'm guessing the problem with that is it's hard for digestion, maybe. Because if it's constantly flooding in, then it probably has a rough time converting it and stuff like that. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, digestion is a very energy intensive operation, which is fine, right? We as humans, we're born to do that, but we don't want to be using our energy for the gut all day long. So just giving, if breakfast at 9, just wait 4 hours before you put something else in your stomach. Give your stomach a little break to just recover. And then that 12 hours overnight, your gut is actually doing its own healing process by not having any food, which is one more reason why you don't want to eat before bed. Hopefully no one's doing that. But.
And with fasting, I think I find it quite hard because if it's like a 16-hour fast, then you trying to not eat for 16 hours and then put 3,000 calories and then sort of go to sleep a couple hours later. Like, is there anything that can help facilitate the fasting process, would you say?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, if you're trying to get enough calories in because you're training, like you need 3,000 calories in, that may be a better way for that maybe would be a 12 to 14 hour daily fast, so that you have more hours in a day to get your calories in. And then you do that bi-weekly 24-hour water fast. That way you give your body one whole day, twice a month, to do all of the fasting benefits, the autophagy and the detox cleaning out. So that's a good way around if you need the calories. And then if you have a hard time fasting, I would say electrolytes are really important. I think people overlook that. So staying hydrated with really high quality filtered water, adding electrolytes in so you're staying hydrated. Because when you're fasting and you get dehydrated, you're going to feel like crap really fast. So water and electrolytes, super helpful. If you are okay with a little bonus, you can do some exogenous ketones. So when you are fasting, hopefully your body starts to produce endogenous ketones, right? That helps fuel your brain with the lack of glucose in the body. If you're open to taking an exogenous one, it's just going to supercharge your brain so you don't get that brain fog that people get sometimes when they fast. And then there's other products coming out. I don't know if you all have Mimeo there. Might be a US-based product, but there's companies like that are coming out with things to support the fast. So it actually helps to it supports anandamide, so you feel like blissful while you're fasting. It actually helps curb your appetite while you're fasting. So some really cool products are coming out. I think we're going to see more and more to help it not be painful.
And electrolytes, that helps because doesn't it contain like magnesium and might be potassium as well? That
and sodium.
And how does that help?
So, well, we should be getting these electrolytes from our water and our food, but the water is it's so dead. I mean, unless you have a local spring you're getting fresh water from, you're pretty much drinking dead water. So I would say filter your water so you're not getting all the toxic heavy metals and all the other, your neighbor's prescription drugs, all the stuff that's ending up in the water supply. So completely filter the water. Then you want to add the electrolytes back in that you should be getting from your water. And then we also do get some from food, but if you're fasting, you're obviously not getting those. And when you're not getting enough of those electrolytes and you're just drinking this dead water and no other nutrients, it's not getting into the cell and actually hydrating the body. So, I see this all the time. People are like, I'm drinking 150 ounces of water, but I look at their labs and they're dehydrated because they're just peeing out this dead water. So you need those electrolytes.
And do you suggest with those that you have to buy like a product that's like a electrolyte powder or whatever, or is it as simple as like, can I just add salt to water to get that, or is it important for me to let's say, because I'm interested from this conversation in trying like a 24-hour fast and seeing how I find it. But if I did that, would you suggest I buy you can see the products of like electrolyte powders that you just add to water? Is that the best protocol?
You could try some sea salt, like a really good quality sea salt, and see how you feel. If it's not enough, then you could kind of up level with some kind of electrolyte powder. But I would just look at the ingredients, make sure they're not adding any artificial flavoring and artificial sweeteners or real sweetener, right? Because if you're fasting, you don't even want like coconut sugar or anything or honey. So you want it to be just like pure electrolyte, something like you all probably have like Quinton minerals. Those are like the most concentrated minerals. Yeah.
You familiar with the drink Prime? Because that was criticized for the amount of electrolytes, if I'm right, Joel. Because it was like an imbalance of some of the stuff inside it.
Yeah, I think it claims to have like really good hydration properties or whatever, but it turns out, isn't there some special in the body? There's certain ratios, or aren't the electrolytes they're paired in a certain way, in the way that they pass across membranes to kind of hydrate cells or something? That's my bro science version of it. But apparently the ratios were just completely off, like in this drink, and it was giving people like one of them in a really high proportion. I don't know if it was like really high potassium and then like no sodium or something like that. It might have been that, but I might be sort of guessing that.
Yeah, we have one here in the States that's like that. Like it got busted for having pretty wacky ratios. Yeah, and that's why Quinton is really good, because I think it comes from off the coast of France, but it's like the perfect ratio of minerals for the human body. So I think that one's probably the best. It's a little more expensive than like your average electrolyte powder, but it gets the ratios perfect. And then there's also the bio-individual component. So even like sodium and potassium, what's going on with you personally? Do you need more sodium? Do you need more potassium? We're kind of just guessing with that.
Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to, before we move on, filtering water, right? Like I agree with you, and I kind of, I'm one of these people that just, I try and remain willfully blind to the fact that I drink tap water. I know that I shouldn't. Like, is it something that I should instill into my brain of like, Joel, you need to buy bottled water and just take that expense because it's crucial? Or if it is filtering that you suggest, like there are different levels to that. So like there's a girl in my flat who has like a jug with a little filtered plastic thing in it. And I'm like, how is that doing anything? Then when I lived at home, my mum had this like filtering machine that would like heat the water up and then put it through a thing and then it would drip out. But that would take 4 hours. And it's like, at university, I'm not going to bring in this massive contraption into my kitchen and be like, sorry guys, is my water filter. So like, do you have any advice for me basically?
Yeah, I would say definitely stop drinking tap water and maybe even buy a water test kit, like on Amazon or whatever. You can get a really cheap one. Test your water and see what's in it. And I think when you see what's in it, you'll be terrified to drink it again. I mean, unless you magically have really good tap water where you are. I mean, I know where I am, it's horrific. So I would say get rid of the tap water. And then for filtration, so distilled water is great for the sake it gets rid of everything, but that includes minerals. So that's where you would have to add the electrolytes back in. I personally like reverse osmosis. Does a really good job of filtering all the crap out, keeping the minerals in. I mean, it's gotten a lot better today. Like AquaTrue, I think you guys have AquaTrue over there. It's a pretty reasonable countertop water filtration system. It doesn't take hours to, drip out. So I feel like it's a good investment because, we can only go so long without oxygen. We can go a few days without water. We can go a few weeks without food, depending on the person, right? So obviously oxygen is the most important, but water is the second most important thing you can do to your body. I mean, most of our body is made up of water. So if you're putting in nasty, toxic water, I think that's a good place to get started. I know it's an investment, but you also don't want to go to plastic water bottles. That's not the answer either.
Oh God, there's so many things to think about with this, right? Okay, yeah, I've got many questions. So reverse osmosis, is that a filtering system, or is that something you put in the water that then does something? I've heard that, but I don't specifically know what that is.
Yeah, it's a filtration system. You can get one like under your kitchen sink. You can get a whole house system. You can get a countertop pitcher. There's a lot of different ways. Like I said, it's so much easier today than it was even like 5-10 years ago. There's a lot more options for that.
Okay, and plastic bottles wise, like, so do I need to get like a metal flask, something like that I drink out of? And is that because of sort of microplastics and things like that we don't want to be consuming, especially if the bottle gets hot and things like this?
Yeah. We're bombarded with plastics. Even if you try to live a plastic-free life, I guarantee you're still getting exposed to these microplastics, whether it's from the clothing, maybe you had tap water when you went out to eat. It's just everywhere. So I think you need to do everything that you can to avoid that. So yeah, stainless steel, glass water bottle, something like that you can reuse. The plastic water bottle, at some point, it was warm enough that the plastic got into the water. And then you're just drinking that.
What are those microplastics doing inside our body?
I don't know that we fully know the detriments of it yet, but we're seeing some really frightening things where they're testing people's blood, people that claim to have a plastic-free lifestyle, and they're still finding microplastics in there. I don't know if we're going to see an increase in cancer, heart disease, dementia. I don't know, but it doesn't sound good to me to have that in your body. I mean, your body can't detox it. That's the other problem. It stays in your body. So it builds up over time.
And these water companies are claiming that their water is all very pure and it comes from the mountains, but really it's like normal microplastics.
Yeah, like Dasani. I know some of them have been busted for like they tested the content and it was identical to the tap water of where it was being bottled. And they claimed it was coming from a spring. And yeah, the marketing is insane.
That's a pretty messed up idea. You could basically just go, if you got some good tap water, you could just fill up, make a water bottle out of it, and then just with marketing, and people won't tell the difference. And obviously it's a necessity because it's water. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're charging a fortune for it. It's crazy. Like, I mean, I live in Las Vegas and I don't know, maybe it's because when people leave the city, they're very dehydrated and hungover, but the water bottles, I go in the stores, they charge like $8-9 for a water bottle. It's insane. I mean, it's definitely worse than like other places, and it's probably just tap water.
Well, I'm worried now, with gel, what's in my tap water?
That's it, man. It's terrible.
It can also be like chemicals, right? That just...
Yeah, fluoride. Like I joke, I would say your neighbor's prescription drugs are ending up in there. So like you could be getting small doses of birth control in your water.
Wait.
And then fluoride, I mean, I don't know how it is where you guys are, but here they intentionally are putting fluoride in our water.
Yeah, we've talked about
it's extremely toxic.
When I told Jacob that you don't actually want to consume fluoride and that it's a big lie that like in toothpaste they're like, oh, you need to intake fluoride, it blew his mind a bit.
You know? Yeah. It's and my parents are dentists and I've never had fluoride. We never had fluoridated toothpaste, never had fluoridated water, and I never had cavities. So it's a bunch of BS from the dental perspective.
Why are they intentionally putting fluoride in your water?
That's a really good question. There's a lot of like conspiracy theories that they're trying to dispose of it, and that's just a free place to dispose of it. Some people are saying, oh, it's good for your teeth, but there is a very small amount of research that shows if you do topical fluoride on a tooth, it can prevent decay. But it's impossible to just put it on your tooth and not ingest it into the body. And once it's ingested, it's extremely toxic. We see thyroid issues, pineal gland issues. Actually, cities in the U.S. where they fluoridate the water, they see a lower IQ in children.
And you said, Joe, it like removes testosterone.
That links to something that I do want to actually talk about because just on a personal basis, and I think Jacob feels the same way. One thing that I would say is one of my biggest fears in life is getting to the point where I want to have children and being infertile. And you see all these news stories about how like the average 21-year-old today has the testosterone of a 65-year-old 50 years ago or whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. That stuff, again, it's something I hear it and it just terrifies me to the core. But like, I think a lot of people, and I feel this in myself as well, feel powerless to do anything about it. Because you say they're putting like fluoride in our water and like everything's just got chemicals in it that you eat and like just plastic everywhere heating up and I'm dying through drinking my tap water. Do you know what I mean? So like, what are... Can you give me any key tips to kind of maintain fertility and testosterone, and I think one of them obviously be avoiding these microplastics and chemicals. But is there anything else, sort of protocols that I can sort of start like from now?
Yeah, I would say number one is don't get stressed about it. I see, like, I know that's hard, but like I see that all the time with really health conscious people. They're like, everything's toxic. I'm just not going to leave my house because everything is killing me. But I think like the mindset and not stressing about it is also really important, because we know that stress kills. I mean, you could argue that maybe stress is the deadliest thing for us. So number one is the mindset of just, hey, I'm educating myself. There are things I can do. There are things I can't do, but I'm going to do all the things I can do and just stay positive about it. So that's number one. As far as sperm count, we're seeing a reduction in sperm count, motility. We're also seeing abnormal morphology in sperm. I think EMFs are a really big problem. So for men, that not just for testosterone, but for fertility, keeping cell phones away from your body, never put it in your pocket. I know that's hard because you're not walking around with a purse, but I know, right? You guys put it in your back pocket or something?
Yeah, so, I put it in my front pocket.
And are you a believer in like the sort of phones, if we're not using them, they should be on airplane mode or turned off because of like the EMF, maybe when we're sleeping, if they're in the same room as us? And wasn't there a bit of research that found sort of kids who had their phones under their pillows at night, or like people who had like damage to the brain, or like a higher chance of Alzheimer's or whatever, things like that? Like, is EMFs a big problem, or is it sort of something that people just pass off as conspiracy, but it's actually like serious?
I think it is a serious problem. I don't think we need to, go crazy and all move to the mountains away from the 5G towers for the rest of our lives. Like, I think we can still own cell phones and live in society. But I would say number one is don't have it on your body as much as possible. And if it is going to be on your body, like you said, in your pocket, airplane mode, or turn it off. That's simple. As soon as you get to where you're going, you sit down, whatever, put it somewhere at least 5 feet from your body. So distance is your friend when it comes to these devices. Like, every foot away from your body is exponentially better. When you're sleeping, you're more sensitive to EMFs because you're going into that deep restorative sleep. That's when your glymphatic system is actually pumping fluid through the brain and cleaning it out. It's cleaning out these plaques and things that actually cause Alzheimer's. So we want to avoid the EMFs as much as possible when we're sleeping. So I say no electronics in the bedroom. Get rid of whatever TVs, computers, put it in the next room. I know it might take some time to adjust to that, but over time you'll get used to it, and then you won't even think about it. I don't have any electronics in my bedroom. I don't even think about it anymore. I keep my phone in my bathroom. I set my alarm so that it's loud enough that I'll hear it from far away. So so not on your body or airplane mode. Distance is your friend. And then you can all go one step further. If you really are like, my testosterone is shot, I'm ready to have kids, my sperm count is bad, then you could look at something like EMF protective clothing. Like for men, Lamb's underwear is a brand that we have here. And they actually found that protects men from seeing these damages to like sperm count and things when exposed to EMFs.
What is EMFs? I'm not too sure on what that is.
Yeah, so they're electromagnetic frequencies. They come from, we also get natural EMFs. So like when you put your feet on the earth, you're getting these natural frequencies that actually support the body. But the problem is it's these man-made ones that are coming from like the 5G towers, the computers, the phones, things like that.
And they reduce testosterone.
Yeah, I don't know the direct pathway that it's doing that. It could be just because of the damage it's doing to the sperm. Yeah. So also going back to like sperm count, motility, morphology. So keeping the EMFs away from there, but also watching out for too much heat, like too much hot tub, sauna, things like that. Do you know Ben Greenfield? Do you know that name, Ben Greenfield? No. He's a big biohacker here in the States, but he actually puts red light therapy on down there, and it increases testosterone. So that's an extra biohack.
Are they like specific red light therapy lamps, or would like just a red light filter over a normal light work? Is it just the red color, or is it a specific type of red light that comes and you buy it for that purpose?
Yeah, there's a specific wavelength. I think it's 440 to 660 is the beneficial range. So yeah, you can't just like get like a red light bulb or something like that. You want to actually buy a device, but you want to make sure it's the right wavelength. But then you also want to make sure that that's low EMF. So with red light therapy exploding, there's a lot of really crappy, cheap products on the market that actually are bombarding you with like a ton of EMFs, which I think just kind of negates the potential upside of the red light therapy. So red light therapy, it's like, wait till you can afford a good device and invest in that. And you'll have that for a long time. Don't like get a cheap one. You're better off just not doing it.
Yeah. I think I'm going to have to, I like to fall asleep to a podcast every night, but I know that obviously having my phone on like near my bed is not good. So then I'm going to have to download what I want to listen to, put my phone on airplane mode.
Yeah.
And that'll be all right. But,
what I suggest is when you set your alarm, to just set and chuck your phone to the other end of the room. So when it goes off, you have to walk up and get it, and you're winning on all the stuff.
All levels.
Yeah. Sometimes I do that when I'm traveling. Like if for some reason I have my phone in like the hotel bed, I'll just like slide it across the carpet as far as it'll go. Yeah, it's the whole thing.
Well, it's just, I find this so interesting because these are the kind of things that no one is thinking about. Like, I would say that it's a huge minority of people that look into this stuff, consume content about this stuff, listen to things and are interested in their own health. But like, it's not just affecting the people that know about it, it's affecting everyone. And we don't have the longitudinal studies to see on sort of a 50-year period, how does exposure to these things like microplastics, fluoride in the water, EMFs from our phones, sleeping with a phone near the bed, like how is that going to affect future generations? And it's like, I'm not going to get stressed out about it, but it's something that's quite interesting to see over the next few years. And I feel like industries like yours are going to get more popular as time goes on, because I think more people will start to realize, because when it hits you and you sort of take that health pill and you realize how our modern world can be a detriment to our health, then more people will be looking for ways and protocols,
Oh yeah, I totally agree. I think that a couple of years ago, people were like, what the heck is biohacking? And I think in the next decade, we're going to see an explosion of it, because one, unfortunately, people are going to continue to get more and more sick. I mean, the chronic illness rate is just skyrocketing at this point. So more people are looking for answers. Traditional medicine, unfortunately, doesn't have the answers. The traditional Western medicine, allopathic medicine, whatever you want to call it, they're great for like acute short-term things. Like you get in a car accident and you break your arm, like, yes, they will save your life. They're there to do the things. But if you have diabetes or heart disease, they don't know what to do. They can't help you. So people are looking for those answers. And then also, I think people are just getting more interested in upgrading. People want to feel better. I know I do. I always want to feel better and better.
You mentioned stress being the biggest killer, and how is that so? Is it because it's like a release over and over again, so it kind of might wear something out?
Yeah, I mean, one is just looking at like the nervous system. So we have the autonomic nervous system. We have two branches: parasympathetic, which is our rest, digest, recover, heal. And then we have our sympathetic, which is our fight or flight. It's our drive. We need it at times, right? We need that sympathetic state to wake us up, get us out of bed, to go to the gym, to do a podcast, right? We're all in a sympathetic state right now. That's great. But we need that balance of parasympathetic. It's almost similar to like the catabolic anabolic thing I was talking about earlier. We want that same balance, parasympathetic, sympathetic. Most humans on this planet are in that sympathetic state all day long, which we see higher cortisol, which can be damaging. We see higher inflammation, more exhaustion. Then you need more time to recover. And no one is getting into that parasympathetic state as much as they need to, unless maybe they're aware of it and they're biohacking and they're doing meditation and mindfulness and yoga, things like that. But I also think just like mindset, again, if you look at the blue zones around the world, a lot of them have an amazing mindset. They have like their community, they spend time with family, they have a purpose, they have a reason they wake up in the morning, even if it's not a job, right? Most of them are retired because they're 105 by now, but they still have a purpose and a positive outlook on life. I think that that's so important. I don't care if you're eating the best diet and you have the most toxic free home. If you are driving yourself crazy, you're not going to see optimal health.
A final area that I want you to sort of touch on before you go is hot and cold exposure, because I've been a big advocate of like cold showers for like a year and a half, and people just think I'm mental, but those who are willing to listen give me a moment to talk about it and why I rate it so much. And then recently, sort of over the past 9 months or so, really got into sauna, and those two in conjunction, like going from hot to cold, doing rounds of that. And I find it's great for like my peace of mind and mental health. And I've heard there's sort of health benefits, but what extent are these hot and cold exposures good for us? And what are the things we should maybe watch out for, the dangers? And do you use these kind of things in your life, and do you advise them to people?
Yes, I think they're great. I think more people should be doing it. And I think there's a growing awareness around hot and cold. Like sauna places are popping up, cold plunge places are opening up. I think it's really great. And I think just like long term, look at Finland, like one of the happiest countries in the world. And they've been doing hot cold contrasts for, I don't know, thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years. It's been around a long time, but just now we're like making it popular because we have Instagram and TikTok blowing it up. But to break it down, so sauna. So my sister Lauren and we have a podcast together. We kind of joke. She's like the ice queen. She loves cold showers, cold plunges. I personally hate the cold. It's really, really tough for me to do it, but I love saunas. So I'll talk about saunas first. Saunas, I mean, the health benefits are endless. We see better cardiovascular health, better immune health, detoxification, weight loss, better mood. And part of this comes from when you're in the sauna, your body actually releases heat shock proteins. And these are a big driver of why we see such good immune health, but also that hotter temperature, it's, obviously heating up the body. We can kill off bacteria, viruses, things that are in the body. But then also the detox side of things. So this is a great thing. Like we were talking about, there's so many toxins everywhere that you can't avoid. So we want to make sure we're getting rid of them. And by sweating it out through the skin, it's one of the best ways to eliminate. We can also get toxins out, obviously, through the colon, through the kidneys, they go through the liver. We don't want to rely on that. We want to try and sweat out what we can. So I'm a big fan of an infrared sauna because that actually penetrates deeper under the skin and it gets into the fat cells where a lot of these toxins are stored, especially heavy metals. It busts that open and then you sweat it out. The other really cool thing about saunas is you are basically getting a workout. You get the benefits of a cardiovascular workout by just sitting there, and you're in a parasympathetic state. So again, going back to the nervous system, it's a great time to relax, do some meditation, mindfulness, breath work practice, but you're getting the benefits of a workout versus if you go for a run, also beneficial, but you're in a sympathetic state. So you want to be mindful how much you're in that sympathetic state. The other end of the spectrum, the cold. So there's different things. So cold showers, that's kind of like the lowest end of the spectrum, I would say. It's fast. Most people can do it. You do see a little bit more like resilience, good immune function, things like that. But then when we get deeper into like cold plunges, have you done like a cold plunge? Have you guys done that? Like actually immersed?
Yeah, like a few, but like it's something that I would definitely like invest in just for my like sport recovery as well.
Yeah. So with that, we see really good, sports recovery. It's good for pain and inflammation. It also is building amazing resilience in the body, like physical, mental resilience, because it is no easy feat to go in there for 3 minutes or whatever you want to do. That's the other thing I would say for anyone that wants to start doing it. You don't have to do much. Like a 3-minute cold plunge session is all you really need. I think the max per week is like 11 to 12 minutes. You actually don't want to go over that. And just like any other hormetic stressor, cold, sauna, exercise, fasting, these are all stressful on the body, but it's good stress in small doses. So we say, okay, 3-minute cold plunge, really stressful. The body is adapting. We're going to come out. We're going to recover. We're going to warm up. The body's going to heal. We're going to take a day off. And then when we feel ready, we're going to do it again. And whatever you can name the hormetic stressor. But when I'm seeing
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
How long are your saunas?
I do 40 minutes 3 times a week. Yeah. So somebody you can do a little bit more. Yeah.
I get 20.
It's different for everyone. Like for me, it's hard for me to sweat. I don't even break a sweat till 25 minutes in. Yeah. So I have to do 40 minutes to get the benefits. Like maybe 20 minutes is all you need.
And yeah, so but like you said, you don't want to do too much of this. Is there a threshold where you would say this is too much heat exposure? Because I know if I had it available, I would go to a sauna like every evening and do like 2 rounds of 20 minutes with cold in between. But would that be too much on my body?
That's a really good question. It's so personal. So are you familiar with heart rate variability?
Yeah.
Yeah. So HRV is a really good way to find out what's too much. So say you do that, your cycle, the sauna, cold sauna, the next day, check your HRV overnight if you have like an Oura ring or something. Did you recover? If you didn't recover, not the end of the world, but maybe you need to take another day off of fasting, exercise, cold, all the things. Check your HRV the next day. Did you recover? Okay. So it takes 48 hours to recover from that. If it takes you 3 days, that's probably too much stress on the body. So I think everyone should be looking at HRV. It's like the best biometric to see how quickly your body can recover from these stresses.
Do you have time for one more question?
Yes.
Okay.
Go for it.
I promised my mum I'd ask you this because she's a nurse and she wants to know. So vitamin pills. I've got a study I can send you, and it's basically that they found that they could cause cancer. I wondered your thoughts on vitamin pills and if there are maybe other downsides that people aren't considering and other like supplements and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that was the vitamin E study. It's possible. There was a big one about vitamin E causing cancer. So there was a lot wrong with the study, I'll say. I think, first of all, it was synthetic. I don't think we should be taking synthetic vitamins. I think we should be getting our vitamins and minerals from whole foods, eating all organic, local, whole foods. But again, our soil is somewhat depleted, so it's a little bit harder to get all that. So second would be, I am a fan of supplements. I take supplements every day, but quality really matters. So if you can't afford the really good, high quality stuff, just don't take it. Don't take the junk, because I think the junk supplements could do more harm. And then that's why we see these studies like the vitamin E study. That one was also looking at, I think, tocopherols, which with vitamin E, you have all the tocotrienols, you have all the tocopherols. Most of the health benefits we're seeing are from the tocotrienol family. And that study looked at a synthetic vitamin E tocopherol. And so I think it was kind of a flawed study to begin with. And then it scared people into like, oh, I don't want to take any vitamins now. But I think you should take them every day, and it just needs to be a high quality. And know where you're getting them from. Like get to know the brands that you're using. Do your research. Yeah, hopefully that helps.
Yeah, that's great. I really enjoyed this one. I think that this will provide a lot of value.
Great.
And listeners will get a lot from it. So it's really good to meet you.
Thank you. I had a lot of fun chatting with you. I really appreciate like your genuine interest, and I hope I gave you some tangible advice and your listeners some advice that there's a lot we can do to support our health. It should be an exciting adventure. So thank you.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you very much.
One more thing. When where should people go to like find out a bit more about you?
Yeah, my website is thebiohackerbabes.com. I'm also on Instagram, biohacker_babes. And then my personal Instagram is Renee Belz, all one word, BELZ. And yeah, connect with me there. Shoot me a message. Would love to hear from everybody. And I'm always looking for like new questions and topics to dive into. So let me know what you're interested in.
Great.
Brilliant. Yeah, lovely to meet you. Thank you very much.
You too. Have a good rest of your night. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.